You ever wake up one morning and just know, in your gut, that today's going to be the day someone finally pushes you too far? Yeah, that was me, staring out the window at Crestwood Heights, a place that looked so perfect from the outside you'd swear it was one of those model neighborhoods you see in commercials. Fresh-cut grass, every flower bed exactly 3 feet wide, mailboxes lined up like toy soldiers. But if you looked a little closer, if you really paid attention, you'd notice the cracks under all that fresh paint. And you'd notice Karen Whitmore, Queen Bee of the HOA, marching around with her clipboard like she was about to declare martial law. Let me back up a sec. So I get home after a long month working in DC, and I'm still hauling my suitcase inside, when I see them, 3 neon red letters plastered to my front door. Not tucked in the mailbox, not slipped under the mat, but taped right up at eye level, like she wanted the whole world to see. Violation 1142. Unauthorized construction on HOA land. Violation 1143. Fence color not approved. And the last one? Final warning. 7 days before legal action. I stood there in my own doorway, reading this stuff, and I had to laugh. I hadn't built a thing. My fence was the same old white oak it's been for a decade. And as for HOA land, please, my deed's older than this HOA. Probably older than Karen herself. But she didn't care about facts, just power. That same afternoon, I find her out there, right on my driveway, sunglasses, pin, clipboard, tapping her foot like, I'm late for a meeting I never agreed to. Mr. Hale, she says, all sharp and official. Your property line extends 12 inches into HOA territory. You'll need to remove your fence or face. Penalties. Penalties? For existing before the HOA did? I almost smiled. You might want to check your own charter, Mrs. Whitmore. Her smirk faded, just a bit. Excuse me. You'll understand soon, I said and walked inside. You know what I mean? There are moments you realize someone's so used to getting their way, nobody's ever told them no. The very next morning, I wake up to find orange construction cones lined up by my mailbox and a new boundary adjustment sign stabbed into my lawn. Before lunch, I spot some local surveyor poking around the edge of my driveway, jotting notes, shaking his head. And through all of it, Karen's white Lexus just keeps rolling slow by my house, like she's on patrol. I hear her gossiping with her friend over the fence. He'll fold. They always do. No one beats the HOA. I guess she thought I was just another neighbor too tired or too polite to fight back. But that's when I decided, all right, it's game on. See, I'd never told anyone this, not even the folks on my street. But I wasn't just Jonathan Hale, your friendly neighbor. I was Judge Hale. Yeah, the guy who signed off on the legal charter that made Crestwood Heights an HOA in the first place. The same document that spelled out, plain as day, which lots were exempt from their rules. Spoiler alert, mine was the first one on the list. 3 days after her final warning, I come home, and there are orange violation stickers slapped across my door, my fence, even my garage. I'd laugh if it wasn't so absurd. Then I hear she's called the sheriff, claims I'm trespassing on HOA land. 20 minutes later, 2 officers show up. Karen's right behind them, arms crossed so tight you'd think she was trying to keep her soul from escaping. The younger cop steps up, all polite. Sir, Mrs. Whitmore says you're encroaching on HOA property. I just hand him a folder. Nothing dramatic, just a stack of documents, federal maps, deeds, the HOA charter itself, signed by yours truly, dated years before Karen ever set foot here. The older officer flips through it, stops, looks up. Judge Hale. Karen goes pale. Wait, you're? The officer nods at her, almost apologetic. Ma'am, his property isn't under your jurisdiction. Her voice cracks. He's lying. Nobody's above the HOA. The cop shakes his head. Actually, in this case, yeah, he is. I step a little closer, calm, not angry, just tired. Karen, you've trespassed, vandalized my property, filed false claims. I could press charges right now, but I won't. Not unless you keep this up. She tries to protest, but she knows, deep down, she knows she's beat. I was just following procedure. Your procedure's been harassing this whole neighborhood for years. That ends today. 2 weeks later, the HOA calls an emergency meeting. Karen struts in, trying to act unbothered in her beige blazer, but everyone can see the cracks. This time, I'm not a neighbor. I'm the presiding federal judge, sitting at the head of the table. The room goes dead quiet when I call things to order. Mrs. Whitmore, I say, you've misused your authority. Falsified reports, harassed residents, misused funds. You're hereby removed from your position, effective immediately. She stares at me, stunned. You can't do that. I just did. The whispers erupt, chairs scrape, and Karen storms out. I swear, if looks could kill, I'd be a headline. But the story doesn't end there, and here's your twist. As she's leaving, one of the newer board members, quiet, nerdy guy named Ricky, the one nobody ever noticed at meetings, stands up and says, actually, there's more. We've been investigating a missing fund from last year's community pool project. Turns out, Karen had been skimming off the top, not just bossing people around. That revelation? Let's just say, the next board meeting had a lot more reporters than usual. The neighborhood changed overnight after that. No more nasty letters, no more measuring grass with rulers. Laughter came back, kids on bikes, neighbors waving at each other again. One evening, as the sky turned that perfect pink behind the rooftops, Mrs. Carter from down the block brought over an apple pie. Judge Hale, you saved us. I just shook my head. Nah, you all saved yourselves. I just reminded Karen whose name is really on the deed around here. But you know how it goes. Peace never lasts forever. There's always another Karen out there, waiting for her turn at the clipboard. So what do you think? Was I right to step in, or did I overstep? Where's the line between protecting a community and letting a little power go to someone's head? Drop a comment below. Tell me if you've ever had to fight for what's yours, or if you've seen justice done in a way that made you want to stand up and cheer. Let's hear it. What would you have done? So, you'd think after all that drama, Karen's meltdown, Ricky dropping the bomb about the missing pool funds, and the neighborhood finally breathing easy again, things would settle down for good. For a while, they did. That first week without HOA patrols felt like summer vacation. I caught myself standing at the window just to enjoy the quiet. No clipboards, no rulebooks, just the normal sounds of kids playing and neighbors actually smiling at each other again. I was almost starting to believe we'd found our peace. But you know how it goes, right? Power's like an empty throne. It doesn't stay empty long. Not 3 days after Karen stormed off, the board started scrambling to fill her spot. And let me tell you, that meeting was something else. You ever seen a group of grown adults try to act like everything's normal while they're all secretly hoping not to get picked for the job? It was pure comedy. Some folks nominated themselves, others flat out refused, and poor Ricky, the one who outed Karen, looked like he'd rather swallow nails than run for HOA president. Eventually, after enough awkward silences and side eyes, they landed on this guy named Paul. Now, Paul was different. Retired firefighter, big on backyard BBQs. Always helped neighbors with busted pipes or fallen branches. The sort of guy who never locked his door and never met a stray dog. He didn't try to adopt. At first, it seemed like a breath of fresh air. He promised transparency, fewer rules, and more potlucks. For a minute there, we actually believed it, even me. I even let my grass grow a little wild just to test the waters. But, and there's always a but, a couple of months in, little things started to creep back in. Not violations, not at first. Just suggestions. Letters about community standards, reminders to keep the spirit of Crestwood alive. It was subtle, almost friendly, but you could feel the old itch coming back. The one that says, hey, someone's watching. You know what I mean? At first, I shrugged it off. I figured, maybe after all the chaos, people just needed a little structure to feel safe. But then one morning, I found Paul himself standing at my fence, looking over with that neighborly smile and a fresh stack of papers under his arm. Morning, Judge, he called out, leaning on the post. Just checking in. Wanted to see if you'd be willing to host the next community meeting. Folks look up to you, you know. It wasn't a bad idea, honestly. I said I'd think about it, and he left without a fuss. That's when I noticed the top sheet of his papers, a draft for new HOA bylaws. Tighter boundaries, stricter parking, even rules about garden ornaments. And the kicker? A proposal to remove the old exemption that kept my property out of the HOA's grip. It was written in pencil, not ink, but it was there, clear as day. Now, I'm not saying Paul was anything like Karen. He wasn't petty, he wasn't power-hungry, at least, not in the same way. But that's the thing about rules, isn't it? Even the best people get tempted by the idea of just a little more control, especially if it's for what they think is the greater good. So, I decided to get ahead of it this time. Instead of waiting for trouble, I hosted that meeting. My house was packed. Neighbors crammed onto folding chairs, kids on the porch, even old Mrs. Carter with her infamous lemon bars. I let Paul speak first. He talked about unity, tradition, pride in the neighborhood, all the usual stuff. Then I stood up, cleared my throat, and told them the story of how the HOA began, how it was supposed to bring people together, not split us apart. I pulled out the old charter, passed it around, and made sure every single person saw the exemption clause, in black and white, not up for debate. But here's where things took another turn. Just as I'm wrapping up, a new neighbor, Julia, single mom, just moved in from out of state, stands up and asks, "Why do we even need the HOA anymore? Why can't we just help each other without all these rules?" The room went quiet. You could feel something shifting, like maybe for the first time, people were actually questioning the whole system. Paul, to his credit, didn't get defensive. He listened. And by the end of the night, folks were tossing around wild ideas, voluntary committees, neighbor-run cleanup days, even dissolving the HOA altogether. Some old-timers hated the thought, but most of us, we liked it. Real freedom, real community, not some rulebook masquerading as friendship. So, that's where we are now. In limbo, I guess you could say. No one's sure what'll happen next, but for the first time in years, it feels like we have a say. Maybe Crestwood Heights will finally become the place we always thought it was. Or maybe we'll fall back into old habits, trading one set of rulers for another. Either way, I'm ready. I learned a long time ago, you can't just let people like Karen or even well-meaning folks like Paul steer your life. Sometimes, you've got to stand up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're the only one in the room holding the original deed. So what about you? Have you ever had to push back against a friendly rule that went too far, or stand up when everyone else just stayed quiet? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear if your neighborhood ever faced its own crossroads, and what you'd do if you were in my shoes. Because honestly, around here, the story's never really over. It just waits for the next chapter.